Good morning, everyone. I am Jessie Whittish with Kentucky Youth Advocates. It is so great to see all of you today. It's been a couple weeks since we've had a forum, and it is nice to see all of you who we may have seen during Children's Advocacy Week, but maybe not. Maybe you're returning to our forum for the first time in a couple weeks. So just a note that we are recording this to share as both a video and a podcast. So we ask that you stay muted, but if you want to ask a question or you have a comment, please feel free to drop that into the chat and we will try and answer those as we go or follow up with you later. We're going to hear from several panelists today who are experts on some policy priorities and let you know how you can take action on those policy priorities. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Terry Brooks.
Hey, thanks, Jessie. And thanks to all of you who were part of Children's Advocacy Week. Our numbers showed that we had over 1,000 people at some of those events. Yes, you can hear my dogs in the background, but I don't know how to mute them. So anyway, welcome today. We want to thank Aetna Health. This would not be happening without their support. And this is our 40th forum since the pandemic started. Now you think about that, for some of you, you're saying, oh my gosh, what if it were 40 years? I can't even imagine being that old. For some of us, we look fondly back on when we were 40 because we were much younger. And speaking of being much younger, here's my metaphor for where the session stands. When I was younger than 40, you did not have packages being delivered by drones. Target was not cool. So you went to Kmart and you'd go to Kmart with cash because you didn't have debit cards, and you'd have your list. This is all that I would like to buy, this whole list. Not unlike how we go to Frankfurt as the session begins. So here's this long list of things that we want to happen. However, as you were walking down aisle 7 at Kmart, that magic moment came, which is, shoppers, welcome to Kmart. We are having a blue light special in aisle 14 for number 2 pencils for 99 cents. Well, it didn't matter if you had number 2 pencils on your list or not. You had to go take action because you had to get those 4 number 2 pencils for the blue light special of 99 cents. Today, we are featuring Frankfurt's blue light specials. And that is, they may or may not have been on your list when the session started. They may or may not have been on our list when the session started, but they are the items, they are the bills, they are the policies that we believe we can buy. They're trying to sell them right now. In other words, what we're going to talk about today is a limited set of issues. They are issues that we need you to take action on immediately because we can win on these items. Now, again, you're going to hear one item and it's like, well, that was on my shopping list to begin with. And that's great. That's the one that you gravitate toward. There may be a couple others that you haven't thought about as your issues. We're asking you to be part of that blue light special as well. So this is the moment for action. We've honed these down. You know how the session's going. We're getting to the part, despite an adjusted schedule, where we're all going to have to decide this is feasible, this isn't feasible, we got to move on these. So this is an opening salvo around bills and issues that are palpable, they're realistic. We can win, and kids can win if you're part of the blue light special that Frankfurt's selling right now. So to facilitate this blue light sale is our COO, Patricia Tennant, and she is going to facilitate the forum and the panel. So Patricia, go to aisle 14 and buy those number 2 pencils.
All right, I will do that, Terry. Thank you. I love this analogy. And I'm excited today because we've got a number of really awesome partners who can speak to you based on their experience and their passion about these particular blue light specials. So they're going to help you make the case and get more buyers. So joining us today, we have Pam Darnell, who's the president of Family and Children's Place, which is located here in Louisville. We have Shannon Smith, who is the Kentucky Government Relations Director for the American Heart Association. Also, we have Becky Stacy, the Administration and Advocacy Director of the Appalachian Early Childhood Network. Also joining us is Rachel Bingham, Executive Officer of the Department of Family and Juvenile Services for the Kentucky Administrative Office of the Courts. That was a mouthful. And finally, on our lovely panel of women, that seems to be our common thread here, is Jackie McGranahan, who is the Policy Strategist with the ACLU of Kentucky. So welcome, all of you. Thanks for joining us. And so I'm going to start with you, Pam. If you could tell us about House Bill 472, which is, and maybe let me start off by framing this for all of you on the call today. Just a reminder, if you want to find an easy way to find the access to these bills, is to go to our website at kyouth.org and check out our bill tracker. And we'll have all of those listed there where you can see the details, the language of the bill, but also the status. But Pam, I'd like you to start with that statute of limitations, House Bill 472. Could you share with us, why is it so important to you? And then give us an overview of what's included and how advocates can get involved.
Sure. Thank you, Patricia. So this bill is very important to Family and Children's Place because all of our work is really around preventing child abuse and neglect and stopping it when it happens, and then helping those families who are hurt to have the healing and recovery that they need. And part of our services is one of the 15 child advocacy centers in our state. And child advocacy centers work exclusively with children who've been hurt by child sexual abuse, children and youth, and who are caught up in human trafficking. So this bill really is very important to us and me personally. And so what Bill 472 does, it was sponsored by Representative Beckler, and it extends the statute of limitations for misdemeanor sexual abuse for minors. It extends it from the now 5 years after the 18th birthday, extending it to 10 years after the 18th birthday. And again, this is for minors who are victims, and it is for misdemeanor offenses. That includes sexual assault, sexual abuse, human trafficking, and other offenses. It's incredibly important that this happen. It allows individuals who've had this experience additional time to share and to be able to have that remedy to them. Because what we know really is that less than 40% of child sexual abuse is ever disclosed to anyone. And sometimes it can take 25 to 35 years on average for someone to share their traumatic story. So this bill is incredibly important. My understanding is right now this is in the House Judiciary Committee. And if any of us have our legislators who are on that committee, it is critical that we contact them and really urge them to support this. But even if your legislator is not on that committee, please contact them anyway. This bill is the right thing to do for children and for adults, because again, what we know is if the average wait, the average length of time is 25 to 35 years of someone sharing their story, then a lot of folks are no longer children when they do decide to share. So it's an incredibly important way for us to expand how we protect children across our state.
Thanks, Pam. Yeah, it seems like that's at least going to 10 years to give that time. I think you beautifully made the case of why, and so encourage everyone to reach out on House Bill 472. Thank you. I know you've got other commitments, so we really appreciate you being able to join us. So stay as long as you can. But, I'd like to then move on to Shannon from American Heart Association and ask you to kind of give us the update on the tobacco preemption. I know there's a couple bills that have been filed, companion bills. So first of all, why now? Why is this so important? And then what's included, and what do you need us to do to help those make it?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I hope everyone's staying warm. I'm pretty sure that we are all experiencing weather conditions that we aren't used to in Kentucky. This is not Minnesota. What is happening? But thank you for having me this morning. And that is definitely a tough bill to follow. And Pam, what an incredible amount of importance it is on that one. So I will be taking action on that as well. So yes, repeal preemption, or what we are calling local tobacco control. So a little history, I'll do this quickly. Back in 1996, Big Tobacco went across the nation passing laws restricting local governments from enacting or having the authority to pass any additional laws as it relates to the sale, marketing, or distribution of tobacco products, which meant they didn't have the option. The state had to take action statewide. Local communities couldn't decide what was best for them. They did this, and it was a smart choice on their behalf because they had 50 states to look at instead of thousands of communities. Well, we believe that it is far time to reverse that law, remove it from the books, and allow local communities the ability to make that decision. You're thinking, why is this important? Why are we talking about it now? Well, you know, we know that people didn't get addicted overnight or lung cancer happen overnight, but we do know with the youth vaping epidemic that we are addicting an entire new generation. We also know that these vape products, electronic smoking devices, are incredibly appealing to youth as they look like candy products. They may even have the same graphics as some of their favorite candy items. So they don't think, and they market them as vapor, which when you hear the word vapor, you think, oh, it's just water, right? They don't really understand the harmful effects. We have taken great measures or tried to pass, local communities do have the ability to pass a smoke-free law and workplaces, but only a third of Kentucky is covered with those smoke-free laws. We took measures last year to raise that purchase age to 21 for any tobacco products, but we know there are bad actors out there still selling these products. Youth are still getting a hold of these products. So why is this important now? We have to stop the marketing to our youth, giving communities the tool, and this is not a mandate. This is a tool that communities can have to address what's happening in their local community, whether that is limiting the display in convenience stores close to schools, whether that is putting a warning above the displays on the actual display unit itself, talking about what it is, removing the products from in front of kids and putting them behind counters. So these are ways local communities can begin to get these out from in front of youth and really stop youth from ever picking up the first device. So it's important now because every day we wait to give local communities this authority, we have more youth that are exposed and become addicted to this product. So right now, Senate Bill 81, sponsored by Julie Rocky Adams, and House Bill 147, sponsored by Representative Kim Mosier, still sit in both House and Senate unmoved and unassigned committee. Our big ask from all of you is to reach out to your legislator, have your volunteers, have your advocates reach out and ask, please send this bill, either one of these bills, to committee. We need to talk about it. We need to create, a sense of importance, awareness, and urgency, because it truly is. We also know that children that vape and contract COVID have larger side effects and are more sick than those that don't vape. So really keeping these products off the shelves, out of windows, away from youth, will help not only the risks of COVID complications, but from youth being addicted to nicotine, a whole new generation, which we know we already have. So our ask again is to get these bills moving. I will say that this is, as some of our other tobacco-free laws, this is probably going to be a multi-year campaign. Being realistic here, I don't see this passing this session, but what we need is to at least get some movement on it. Having 2 bills introduced and them dying day one, it shows, very little importance to our lawmakers or even the advocates or their constituents that this is an issue we need to talk about. If we could get it into one committee and vote it out, whichever way that votes, we can at least highlight and show the importance of this to move forward. We can build the campaign, we can make it stronger over the interim into next session. So it's critical that we get some movement now. It being stalled or dying, could be the death of this campaign moving forward. And we know that local communities know what their communities need. They know if there's a concentration of vape stores next to, several schools or playgrounds or churches or youth centers. So there are measures that local communities can have, a tool in the toolbox. One thing I will say about this bill, it does not allow communities to pass a tax. So that's, if that question comes up, it does not allow for an excise tax to be placed on the product. This is strictly around the marketing, sale, and distribution of these products. And one other point I will make, and then I'll stop, is doing this is not unlike the ability that local communities have on the sale of alcohol or the marketing of alcohol right now. Local communities can choose not to have, the alcohol display signs that you see in some of the convenience stores located next to a school. They can force the products to be put behind a refrigerated door that you can't enter unless you're 21. So they have measures, and then the wet dry also, local communities decide. So we are just asking that the state give the authority back to local communities to decide what's best for them. And our big ask of you, or my big ask of you, is to please contact your legislator and ask them to move this bill to committee.
Wonderful, thank you. I hadn't heard about that connection between vaping and COVID complications for youth. So, yeah, it's incredibly timely. It makes so much sense. Why wouldn't we allow local communities to take those measures and instead let big tobacco make the shot? So
absolutely.
Everyone, please also, reach out to your legislators. And also, if you've got relationships with Representative Mosier and Senator Rocky Adams, thank them for showing their leadership on this and being champions for health. So thank you very much, Shannon. Next, I'd like to move on. We're going to change the topic now to family childcare. And this is an issue that has getting a lot of attention. I know we were very excited alongside you, Becky, to see that Governor Beshear changed and allowed childcare workers now to be on the list of 1B to get vaccinations. So huge kudos to you. I know you played a big role in that advocacy, Becky, and we're grateful for that. And now, so Becky's with the Appalachian Early Childhood Network. And I know you all have been longtime advocates for family childcare, which is childcare within a person's home for up to 6 children. Can you tell us a little bit about the bill that's currently moving and why it matters to you and how you'd like to see advocates involved?
Thank you so much. I'm lucky enough to have a friend named Ben who said he would jump in this morning and actually do the specifics of the bill. But I do have some important points to make. Ben, would you mind doing that first?
Absolutely. So before Becky joins to share a little bit more about her direct role serving child care providers in Eastern Kentucky, in particular family child care providers, I'll share a bit of information about Senate Bill 148, which is sponsored by State Senator Danny Carroll in far west Kentucky. What Senate Bill 148 does in regards to family child care is it pulls out family child care out of the barrel of every other in-home business that would need to go through a local zoning or licensing structure through your local community. So what this bill will do is it will pull family child care, elevate it above the rest out of that barrel. It will inform more people at the local community level in different municipalities on what family child care is and how it's different from any other business that may operate out of your home. Like the example that we keep hearing are like in-home dog groomers, family child care providers. Right now, same process for both. Very, very, very different industries for very, very different reasons. So we're very excited that this bill passed out of the Senate Health and Welfare Committee last week. It's expected to pass out of the Senate, although it has not yet. I know that we're going through the readings process in the Senate at present. If not for the snow this week, we were hoping to see it pass out of the Senate this week. So in the interim period, let's not let that momentum die. Contact your state senator. Tell them how important this particular bill is, in particular the family child care provision. And keep your thinking caps on, because I've got a feeling that soon we'll be heading over to the House of Representatives. So we're going to need your help there too. So that's just a little bit about the bill, and Becky's going to tell you why family child care is so important.
Thanks, Ben. So I am in Hazard, Kentucky, right smack dab in the middle of a child care desert, of course. And when we look at the history of family child care homes, we'll see that in the past 20 to 25 years, we've gone from about 1,200 to around 250 at the time of the shutdown, maybe less now. And we feel like that now's the time to strike. The iron is hot, let's strike, because everybody is seeing that childcare is so important right now. We're getting some money put into childcare at the moment, which, you know, hasn't been happening traditionally. And family in-home childcares they just make good sense. If you look at statistics, so many women have lost jobs during the pandemic. This is a perfect career, time to start a new career, perhaps. Regulated childcare, if it's a certified home, they can keep up to 6 non-related children, 4 related children. You can have childcare right in your area. I know in Eastern Kentucky, we have such tough terrain and things are so far apart that having a family home right there where you live would make so much more sense than what we're doing right now. So we are looking at some really good things happening, and we hope that this bill will help with those extra hoops that certified family home providers have had to jump through, zoning regulations that seem, you know, quite unfair for childcare. So we're hoping that will help. And also we're very excited to say that we are getting ready to help with the new Family Childcare Network. We're so excited to be included in that work. And we're looking forward to, right now, just in Hazard, I have 8 people that have showed interest in opening a new family childcare home. So we are so excited about this work. And we just need everybody to back us, I think, so that we can see more of these types of childcare openings, because our families really need it right now. We have waiting lists all over Eastern Kentucky, especially, and this is a good, viable option for us, I believe. So I'm glad to see such support right now for childcare. It's very heartening to see that happening.
Thank you, Becky. And I think I'm also super excited to see the momentum for childcare. You know, like you mentioned, 50% of Kentuckians live in a childcare desert. It's not just Eastern Kentucky, it's across the entire state. So it's time that we need to be supporting childcare providers, because we know that supports parents and kids. Everybody wins, and local economies. So thank you for that. And so a reminder, so it's Senate Bill, Ben, 180.
148.
I flipped my numbers. So please reach out to your senators, encourage them to vote yes when it comes before them. And thanks so much, Becky. Okay, now we'd like to move along to the arena of juvenile justice. And joining us is Rachel Bingham. And we'd love for you, Rachel, to tell us about the effort to not charge children 12 and under, or minimum age as we call it. Can you kind of share with us a little bit about why it's so important, what's included in the current effort, and how advocates can help?
Great, thank you. And I appreciate Courtney reaching out and including me. And I'm going to lean on Courtney a little bit when it comes to the part to talk a little bit about the bill, but wanted to give you some history. Terry actually opened up the whole thing around the fact that some of us have been around a while, and I totally connected with Kmart and loved Kmart. It's my son's first job. So I was all there. It also took me down memory lane looking at some of the prep in regards to this conversation today, because we've been involved, the AOC has, around this conversation and in this particular category of youth for years. In particular, we started to really lift up looking at this work back in 2010, very intentionally looking at the category of 10 and under at that time. So we were excited to see that there's a lift up to go to that age group of 12 and under. Just to give you a little perspective, I oversee basically all the family and juvenile programs for the court system, so child welfare and juvenile justice, and work within the Court of Justice around those initiatives and efforts. So we have a pre-court diversion program housed within the Administrative Office of the Courts called the Court Designated Worker Program, and we would be the people that work with and handle all the front end support services, resources to keep kids from ever having to go into the court door. Many of you on this call are familiar, I'm sure, with the juvenile justice reforms back in 2014. And so we've really lifted up in Kentucky efforts around keeping our kids from ever having to be involved with the court system. We all know that the research definitely shows that once kids enter the court door, they are more apt to have a trajectory of being involved with the court system. And we want to make sure that we can keep kids definitely out of that option and more connected to resources, supports, and services. So we looked at this particular category of youth back in 2010, and the data really showed that we had actually at that time, now this is 10 and under, we had over 500 kids that had complaints filed with them back in 2010 in that time period. And we were just mortified, to be very transparent. We immediately put in place with the Court Designated Worker Program policies that require this check and balance. We are required to accept complaints into the program. So how could we be able to talk with the county attorney? How could we use our own structure to really keep those kids from ever having any contact with the system? And so even though a complaint might be filed, it didn't mean ever, and that's the way the CDW program works, that that kids go to court. And so those initial numbers were just heartbreaking. Those policy changes immediately saw within 2 to 3 years drops in those particular age groups. So we knew that that was one tool in the toolbox of how to effectively address the policies. When the reforms came out in 2014, it was another opportunity to be able to really impact that particular category of youth because the reforms did establish a family accountability intervention response team that basically says all status and public offenses prior to going to court have to go through that multidisciplinary team. Simultaneously, the State Interagency Council was working through a work group where they established a chance to kind of do some deep dive research around this particular group of kids. And the current Frisky director, Melissa Goins, and the behavioral health policy analyst, Tina Robbins, were involved and kind of led that work group. And it was really about how can we really back up what we know to be better opportunities for that age group. And those are things like really intentional screening and assessments. Those are things like multidisciplinary team approaches. Those are things like getting kids connected to services and supports for the family, and being much more holistic in the approach than trying to just charge a kid. And so out of that information, the State Interagency Council has then every year to the governor in their recommendations recommended some sort of lift up around that particular age group. So we're coming from all these different, approaches to be able to really make an impact. And so when Kentucky Youth Advocate has really kind of lifted this work up, now again this year, it really brings to the forefront what we need to consider for that group of kids. And now our data, just to give you an idea of what our data looks like, We now are, I actually pulled data for the category of 12 and under. So historically, we've been tracking year after year this steady decline for 10 and under. I pulled this time for 12 and under. And I actually found that we had, for the category of 12 and under for calendar year 2020, of course, pandemic year, but we already saw those numbers trending down. We had a total of 325 youth that had charges. But if you looked even deeper at those numbers and separated that 10 and under, remember, back in 2010, I was looking at over 500. Now I had a total of 10 and under 10 kids, 10 total kids. So policy within the court designated worker program has definitely made an impact, no question. Conversations with our county attorneys definitely made an impact. Having alternative collaborative opportunities, definitely an impact. But at the end of the day, why is the door there at all? And so having that chance to really be able to have conversations around this particular legislation and to hear what KYA has done to lift it up is just one of those pieces that I think anybody that's involved in a child serving entity, role, agency is looking to be able to get those better outcomes. For the court designated worker program, what that would basically entail is the opportunity for this particular category of kids to get to that family accountability intervention response team faster. Let's get services and resources and conversations happening from a multidisciplinary approach. The Cabinet for Health and Family Services has representation through the DCBS office that sit at the table. We also have clinical people that are there. We have the county attorney represented. We have the public defenders. We have a group of people there that can look really holistically. And so that opportunity to really be able to kind of wrap around kids in that approach is something that we all know is better for our young people. So Courtney, I think I'll kick it to you if it's okay to just kind of sum up the legislation itself.
Yeah, and thank you. I'm so glad that you were able to be here and get some of that data, because to have that number go down to 10 is just, that's incredible. So thank you for all of your work and for sharing all of that with us. So Senator Kerr is the sponsor of the bill, and the language has been drafted. It's really just waiting at this point to be filed. Unfortunately, that process has been postponed a little bit because of the weather. But in the bill, what it's going to say is that any children who are under the age of 12, the court designated workers or the CDWs won't take any action on that complaint other than referring them to the FAIR team. And that's what Rachel was just talking about, the Family Accountability Intervention and Response Teams. I think she has perfectly articulated, the impact that this bill will have on kids across Kentucky, and also talked about how long advocates have been working on it. So this is something that we really need to push our legislators on. So please start reaching out to them now, ask them to support it, and then also, send an email, a letter of thanks, call Senator Kerr, and thank her as well just for making this a priority.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I think just like with childcare, we've seen good momentum here. I love hearing that historical effort and how it's building, and it feels like the right time to take this action. So thanks so much, Rachel and Courtney. So now I would like to turn the lens to the Dignity Bill number 2, and Jackie McGranahan from ACLU. I think, I don't know, Jackie, if you want to start with the video, or if you want to start, I'll turn it over to you, however you want to share with the group.
Hello, everyone. So first, what the Dignity Bill 2 is it's an expansion on the original Dignity Bill. And in 2018, Senator Julie Rocky Adams sponsored a bill because women are the fastest growing incarcerated population in the United States and in Kentucky. And the original Dignity Bill stopped shackling pregnant people while they were incarcerated. It was meant to stop shackling pregnant people while they were giving birth and offer humane solutions for people. And it also expanded it started a foundation of community-based substance use disorder treatment programs for pregnant folks. And what that means for someone who's pregnant is getting the opportunity to stay with their child and not be separated. So what the Senator Julie Rocky Adams is bringing back the Dignity Bill, and she's calling it Dignity Bill 2. you know, such a perfect name. And what this would do is offer 6 weeks of postpartum care where right now there is none. It would end solitary confinement for pregnant folks, and it would require the Kentucky Department of Corrections to collect data and publicly release it on solitary confinement for every person who's incarcerated, including juveniles. And also, it would expand on access to community-based services. And what I'm going to do now is share this video, and this is of a story of a personal experience of a person that we're familiar with, Erica Ellison, and this is her story.
I wasn't 6 months pregnant and getting high because I could stop and I just didn't want to. I understand that what I did was wrong. I understand that probably saved my baby's life, but I still feel like there's some kind of something that can be done for the pregnant mothers that are incarcerated.
I just don't view that having a dignified birthing experience is somehow special treatment. I think it's just humane treatment. Our jails were all built for men. How do you handle a female prisoner versus a male prisoner? We're incarcerating a bunch of women. They are primarily addicted, which has caused them to commit these crimes. Why are we putting them in prison? Why don't we start to talk about how do we get them into recovery?
They took me into the hospital. You've got this khaki jumpsuit and you've got shackles on, and they throw a blanket over your lap. You can hear the chain on the shackles dragging from the wheelchair. They left me shackled to the bed after they gave me my epidural for a C-section. When I got back to prison, I got all my stuff and I went back to my dorm. They called my name to the office and I had to walk all the way to the administration building. Just had a C-section 3 days ago. And walking's the very last thing you want to do after a C-section. You have to walk a good distance 3 and 4 times a day and stand in line in the cold, regardless of what I did and the choices that I made. Like, that's not okay.
The job was not complete after Dignity Won. There are still so many things that we needed to figure out relative to this population.
Postpartum care is non-existent. I mean, even something as simple as breast pads. It's non-existent. You don't have it. You've gotten a certain number of panty liners that you get to go through. And after that, that's it.
The truth is, when it comes to women, the majority of the women who go to jail are addicted to drugs. It's a disease. And so when we're trying to heal that individual from that addiction, and then you add a baby into it, you're just looking at a very different scenario. It's not black and white. It's not you committed a crime and you got to do the time. It's a gray area. The other aspect of the Dignity II bill that I think is really important is that we need to start doing data collection. How many are coming in pregnant? How many are being put into solitary confinement? How many are having babies that, you can go home after 2 days versus NICU care? What does our prenatal and postnatal care look like within that corrections facility? And just, generally, how are we treating them? But you can't make public policy better unless you have that data component.
I think maybe just that open-mindedness to, hey, it's not a choice. Today I can make a choice not to get high, but it's hard to do it when you can't stop.
We call it the Dignity Bill, and some people say dignity. Well, these people are incarcerated, and I'm like, well, Yeah, they made a mistake. You know, some mistakes are more egregious than other mistakes. But I've never been, I mean, in my 51 years of life, I've always been forgiven for certain things. I've made amends for certain things. Incarceration is no different. Our goal is to make sure that that person not only makes amends, but then changes behavior.
I have a job. I'm trustworthy. The stability that my kids have, that means the most to me.
Even though these people have had problems, we are going to be part of the solution in being thoughtful of how we promote corrections policy in the state.
Okay, so those are all folks who are very near and dear to my heart, and Erica has worked very extensively with myself and Pegasus and Julie Rocky Adams, and it's very much past time to make some changes, and instead of just offering punishment, offering solutions. And with the original Dignity Bill, there were several states who followed in our footsteps. Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina, they all filed their own dignity bills. And we were the first state to do it. You know, so we are expanding on these things. And the bill passed out of Senate Judiciary Committee. And then it went to the floor in the Senate and it passed out unanimously, which, you know, knowing the work that everyone has put into this, you know, it was amazing. But we still have quite the uphill battle because it's on its way to House Judiciary soon. So if folks could contact your local representative and tell them to support Dignity Bill 2 and support, I think that this is definitely a bipartisan bill. It's not a Democrat or a Republican. It's about what can we do for other human beings, you know, so. But I will pass it back to.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I'll take it. Wow, what a powerful video. What a powerful champion we have in Senator Rocky Adams. I know if any of you are her constituents, I would give her a huge shout out for that. And also thank your senators. It passed unanimously. So we all know that all of our senators voted for it. Give them kudos. And yeah, let's definitely reach out to our House members as well. And thank you so much for championing this. It's exciting to see that progress. Okay, now to wrap us up today, I am going to now turn to our Chief Policy Officer, Mehek Kalra, to give us an update on the budget. And Mehek, maybe you can kind of work in the update on the timeline and what advocates should be expecting there. I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Patricia. And I just want to take a second to say thank you to our speakers because, you know, your personal stories, Jackie, what the video that you just shared and the work that you've done, but Rachel as well as Becky. I mean, these are systems that we're trying to change, as you could tell, and it's a lot of hard work behind that. So I just want to say thank you for that before I dive into the budget, because I know that there's a lot of work that has been done and we're halfway through the session and we all need a little kudos for all the hard work that you all put in. So diving into the budget, just a quick refresher, the Kentucky House and Senate both passed a continuation budget, which is House Bill 192 during the first 8 days of a 30-day session. And that action means that appointed members from both chambers and both parties will participate in what's called a conference committee to negotiate and compromise on details of the state budget before the final gavel falls in March. And so with that being said, there are some days at the end of session that are called conference committee days, and that's when really they're going to hash out those details and hopefully present a budget that will then go to the governor. So Kentucky kids and families, we know they need a strong budget investment to create a brighter future where all kids can thrive. And though we have a full list of budget priorities for kids and families, today I'm just going to highlight 3 priorities that are either gaining momentum or need an additional boost from our advocates here on our call and listening. The first budget priority gaining momentum is increasing funding for child care assistance. The Child Care Assistance Program, CCAP is what it's formally called, provides critical support to allow parents to work by helping them afford safe and reliable childcare for their children. And we've heard already, access to childcare enables parents to enter and remain in the workforce, which supports the broader economic growth of Kentucky. And as our economy begins to recover and unemployment parents seek to re-enter the workforce, it's so critical that the lack of access to childcare does not become a stumbling block, but really a road to recovery. And even before the pandemic, we've already heard that estimates suggested only 11% of eligible children were served by CCAP, and over half of Kentuckians lived in childcare deserts, meaning that there are no licensed childcare centers or not enough slots to meet the demand. Kentucky must increase funding for child care assistance program and also increase reimbursement rates for providers to keep existing child care centers from closing their doors and maintaining that affordable, high quality care throughout Kentucky. Another budget priority gaining momentum is investing in infrastructure to close the digital divide so kids and families can access educational resources, but also telehealth services that they need. So students need affordable and accessible internet connections to fully engage in learning in school. And due to school closures during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've known how internet is critical even right now for us as adults, but also for children. The barriers faced by many families in accessing and using technology has been glaringly apparent during this pandemic. In addition, the quality of internet access is important for kids' health, as many healthcare providers are now offering telehealth services. Yet Kentucky faces a digital divide that too many families, both in the rural and urban cities, are lacking, really. And we've heard numerous times, Kentucky ranks 40th in broadband access. So a gap in infrastructure impacts rural communities, and the lack of affordability drives gaps in access in cities, which results in fewer families of color having strong internet connections. So Kentucky can really close a gap by investing in infrastructure needed for more accessible and affordable higher speed internet services. And the last budget priority that we want to lift up is sustaining investments in Medicaid and K-CHIP, and prioritizing investments focused on closing the remaining gap and addressing racial disparities in coverage so that kids and families can continue to access the care they need. So Kentucky has made great strides to improve the number of children who have access to the health coverage through K-CHIP program and Medicaid. And just as a refresher for folks, K-CHIP and Medicaid ensures that low-income families receive access to health coverage that allows them to visit healthcare providers to address their physical, behavioral, oral, and vision health needs. And so going back to coverage rates, they remain high, but the progress has been stagnant. There's still at least 45,000 kids and teens who need to be enrolled in health insurance. And we know the linkage of parents' health in accessing health insurance affects the health and well-being of their children. So when parents are insured, then kids are more likely to be insured as well. And during the pandemic, it's even more vital that everyone has access to health insurance so they can get the care they need. But yet we know COVID-19 has highlighted some pre-existing racial disparities in healthcare and coverage. So just wanted to go ahead and highlight, as we move forward in the budget priorities, we are asking advocates to help us ensure children and families continue to have that access to healthcare that they need. So with the General Assembly not meeting this week due to the weather, now is the perfect time to reach out to your state legislators that represent you, conference committee members, and the governor during this final half of the session. To find out who represents you in Frankfort and how to connect with them, feel free to use our legislator lookup tool. Secondly, we encourage you to view and download the full Blueprint for Kentucky's budget checklist as well. And lastly, please stay up to date with our Kentucky General Assembly bill tracker and also our previous advocate virtual forums to kind of dive into more of the nuts and bolts of the budget priorities that we have. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ben Geese, to wrap us up today.
Yeah, thank you so much. First, I want to begin by thanking all of the speakers on today's call, the advocates that have joined us, as well as the participants who are listening from home. I know when I woke up this morning, it was super cold in my house. It was Wednesday. We're in the middle of session and I was feeling kind of drained. But now, after listening to the work of all of our colleagues and our partners, I feel motivated, I feel inspired, and I feel ready to go. So I have you all to thank for that personally as well. And I hope that others on the call feel the same way. Of course, I would be remiss not to also thank our partner, Aetna BetterHelp of Kentucky, for their support of today's forum. And next week, I have to let you know that I am so excited for next week's forum. So go ahead and RSVP to this if you haven't already, because it's going to be huge. Next week, we're going to be discussing the pandemic in K-12 schools across the Commonwealth. We know that during this transition period of hybrid schooling, returning to school, some families may be opting not to return to school just yet. We're going to talk about the practical considerations and solutions to meet the needs of kids who are now in a very different reality than before the pandemic when it comes to their educations. We are so excited that Dr. Kish Kumi Price of the Louisville Urban League, who's been such a wonderful partner in this work, will join us, as well as another wonderful partner, Dr. Jim Flynn of the Kentucky Association for School Superintendents. Again, it's going to be big, so go ahead and RSVP now. And of course, as always, our follow-up email will include a recording of today's forum, along with the resources we discussed, and a link to sign up for next week's forum. So with that, I want to again say thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same Zoom.